In this video, I'm going to walk through a special order decision as part of differential analysis. We're presented with a company that manufactures and sells a gold bracelet, typically for $189.95. A special wedding party has approached and said, we'd like to buy 20 gold bracelets, but we don't want to pay $189.95. We want to pay $169.95. Now, before we even get into cost, and according to our financial accounting records with full absorption costs, they say our unit product cost is $149. Before we even get into that, I'll note, if the company was at capacity, meaning I'm full, I don't have any other ability to accept any other orders, and if they accepted the special wedding party's order, they would turn away another order willing to pay $189.95. If that were true, irrespective of cost, we'd say, forget it, wedding party. I can get $189.95 from somebody else. Why would I pay you $169.95? We, however, are not, they note later in the problem, that we are able to fill it with existing capacity, meaning we're not turning away other orders. Sometimes you find yourself in a situation that, you know, if you have an opportunity, you could look at a couple different ways. And I've been in this in the real world where, hey, if I don't scare up some extra orders, there may be people that we have to lay off. You know, as long as we can cover any of the incremental costs that we'll have to spend, things like labor, material, those types of things, it makes sense to keep people working. The other way you can look at this is maybe you entice the wedding party to make that initial purchase, and certainly, you know, people get interested in the product, and you can say the next time, hey, I can't do $169.95. We're going to have to do the regular price. So those may be reasons why you would accept a special order under the typical price if you have the capacity. Now, let's make sure though, because beyond the lower price, they also want some special accommodations for the bracelet, a special filigree that's going to cost additional material of $2, and also they're going to have to buy a special tool of $250. So let's do a comparison to compare the revenue that we're going to earn compared to the relevant costs that we're going to spend to make these additional bracelets. So I'm going to do it per unit and also in total. Well, what's the incremental revenue? Well, it's $169.95 per bracelet. Remember, they're not willing to pay the $189.95. They're only willing to pay $20 less. If we multiply that times 20 bracelets, $169.95 times 20 is $3,399. That's the relevant additional revenue, accepting the bracelets. Let's think of the relevant or incremental cost, what we're actually going to incur if we make them on a per unit basis. Direct materials of $84. Absolutely. I can't make a bracelet without that $84 in material. Direct labor, given no other information about our employees, that would be that much additional work that we would give them at $45 per unit, so that would be relevant. Manufacturing overhead. Now, it's not broken down here by variable and fixed, so let's read through here. They've determined most of their overhead is fixed and unaffected in how much jewelry is produced, so it's not going to change. However, $4 of the overhead is variable, 4 of that 20, with respect to the number of bracelets listed. So what are we going to list for manufacturing overhead? Only the $4 and variable overhead. Given no other information, the other $16 based upon this is fixed manufacturing overhead and is not going to change based on the information that they gave us, irrespective of how many bracelets. If we make 20 extra, it's not going to change. It can include things like rent or depreciation on the facility, rent or depreciation on the equipment, salaries of supervisors, those types of things. We aren't going to incur any additional related to that fixed overhead. Remember, fixed overhead isn't changed by activity level by making 20 extra bracelets, so we're going to ignore that and only consider the $4 in variable overhead. Anything else we have to consider. You might have said, wait, you listed $84 for direct materials, but they said we're going to increase the direct materials cost by $2. Well, you could have changed that to $86 and add the $2. I just listed as a special incremental cost just to segregate it, that $2 for the special filigree cost. Adding up the relevant variable cost per unit, $84 in direct material, $45 in direct labor, $4 in variable manufacturing overhead, and the $2 of the special filigree. A relevant cost of making the 20 bracelets is $135 per unit. $135 per unit times 20 bracelets is a relevant total variable cost of $2,700. We also need to consider any fixed costs. Again, I already noted the fixed overhead is not something we consider. It doesn't change based on the activity level, but there is a relevant fixed cost that we don't have if we don't make the bracelets, but we do have if we do, and that's a special tool that we have to buy. The $250 isn't $250 per unit, it's $250 in total. So we'll add that fixed cost of $250 to the variable cost of $2,700, and that gives us a total incremental cost of $2,950. Subtracting that then from our incremental total revenue of $3,399 gives us additional profit of $449 if we accept the special order because the revenue exceeds the cost. Saying this another way, it's a financial advantage because, again, relevant revenues exceed the cost, and we would accept the special order from the wedding party because we more than compensate for our costs, keep our employees busy, and again, perhaps entice somebody to make an additional purchase from us and try to negotiate them up to our regular price.